Hi guys, I'm back, and this week is a little bit weird because I didn't have any video planned, and then I realized which date is actually today. Today, sorry, that was my phone, let's switch this off. Today is actually the 5th of November, and yeah, for those who love V of Vendetta, I hope I'm saying it right, it's a very remarkable date. I actually love the film too, and I want to read the comics, but for me, the 5th of November is also very special because we actually today is the 3rd anniversary of my channel. I started posting videos before the 5th of November because I wanted to do intros and generate a little bit of noise in social media and stuff. But the first official video with me introducing myself was actually on this date 3 years ago, and I decided that in a similar vein to what I did last year with the 50 literary facts about me, I want to talk about 5 books that were actually very, very remarkable, very, very important in my life. So we are going to start. They are going to be a little bit trickier and a little bit different from the Spanish version, but I would love to share them with you anyway. So we are going to start with Harry Potter. This is how the 1997 Spanish version of the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone looked like. This is the first copy I have. I also have the English 20th anniversary edition, the hardback, the Hufflepuff hardback, because I'm a Hufflepuff. But this is my first edition, and as you can probably tell, it's very, very, not that much, but used. I used to read it at least every summer for a while, for a really long time, I think. I read the whole saga during the summer several times. Harry Potter was very important to me because I read it when I was around, I don't remember, I think I was around 7. No, I was more, I think I was around 9 or something when I got this. And it was very important because I haven't read fantasy until, or at least what I consider fantasy, until that part. Normally the books that I used to read were fairy tales or other kind of short stories, more based on the reality, more contemporary kind of thing. But this exceeded everything I knew, and actually this was like my jump to my fall to the fantasy world. And fantasy for me is actually my favorite genre, and I think it's actually because of this saga. I understand that there are people who actually don't like Harry Potter, and I understand that new generation maybe don't connect with Harry Potter in the way my generation and the previous ones used to do, and that's alright. That's why I love the YA and the children universe or sphere of readers so much, because we are very open. But to me, Harry Potter was the start of something that it hasn't actually ended. To me, the idea that someone could actually create a whole society, a whole world with its own proper rules, it was very outstanding for my children's self. And maybe that's why I started writing notebooks, short stories that I never finished. But maybe this is the beginning. Later on, when I was around 11, I discovered Marian Corley's books. This is again in Spanish, but this is important because when I was around that age, I had to be hospitalized for not very long period of time, but I've never been hospitalized before, and I have to had a surgery. I'm talking about it because it has a relation with the story. I'm just trying to find the proper title so I can tell you Of course. This is... Oh, it's the Bloomsbury one. Okay. So this is the proper title of this is not The Circle of Fire, as would you translate it. This is All Magic. This is the first book I read of hers. And this is important because, as I told you, during that period of hospitalization, I actually couldn't move. And I didn't read this. This was read to me by my family. I always loved to read, so finding myself in a position where I actually couldn't move, where I actually could not do anything at all by myself, only because I had a surgery and I was recovering and I couldn't actually move, was very painful. So we used this book as a getaway when pain was very high and I needed a distraction, or when I was very bored and I actually needed somewhere to run to or to escape to because I couldn't leave the hospital. So yeah, my dad used to read me this every night until the point my actual roommate asked us to read it for him as well, so he wasn't alone either. And I love that. I love that Marianne Curley was able to be my refuge. She already knows this, but I love that because I discovered her with this book in particular. She has a beautiful trilogy that is now a quartet apparently, that is called The Guardians of Time. I hope I'm saying it right. A different set of novels, but that I also loved. That so far we have the first three in Spanish. But this one is about Kate, who has a little secret. She is a witch, and when a new boy arrives to her high school, this is not children fiction, this is YA, or at least the first YA I read. When Jared arrives to the high school, this new guy, she discovers that his talent is actually to be very, very kind of clumsy, and everything related to bad luck goes directly to Jared. So maybe he's not just someone with bad luck. Maybe he's hiding something that only a witchy kind of girl like her can unsolve, or solve, better said. And I really wanted to hide this, to actually show this. This is important because if Marianne Curley is able to see this, she basically, and her words were my shield during that time. So I'm very grateful for that. The next one I am going to mention is actually Sherlock Holmes short stories. I have my copy of the complete Sherlock Holmes short stories over there, but the reason why I picked this one up, I will post a photograph at some point, but the reason I picked this one up, even though I haven't read the book that you see over there after the two yellow tomes, I think you can see his kind of figure at the top. The reason I pick Sherlock, even though I haven't read that one yet, it's because when I was studying English initially as a child, I wasn't very good at it. I was really bad, and I remember my parents hired a professor, an English tutor, to actually help me out with the homework, the school homework, and also to let me improve my level of English. So at the beginning it was pretty hard because I had a lot of English grammar to catch up to, and then when I got to more or less decent level compared to what I was asked to do in school, my professors, the professors I had, the tutors I had, discovered, one of them in particular, discovered that I love reading, and she started giving me adapted classics to my level of English at that time. And I remember that I had this kind of tiny, it was like this long, short Sherlock Holmes short story collection adapted to the language of my level of English. And later on I had to do compositions and exercises to make sure I understood the stories. And I really like it because I discovered that it was not only the grammar, that actually the grammar could actually be used to be understood and to enjoy other kind of stories that I've never heard of, because I always remember Sherlock Holmes from the adaptations, the TV adaptations and the cartoon adaptation that I've watched, but no, I wasn't sure that it was actually a proper novel. And that's why, even though I have a copy of a very old copy of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes in Spanish, I normally go to the English version of it because it's the way I experienced it first. In a similar vein, and this is not another number, this is an extra. In a similar sense, another tutor that I had when I was already in a higher level, she started talking to me about Jane Austen. She loved Jane Austen, and she was able to ignite that spark of love towards her works, even though I only read like 3. Well, I read 3 and listened to a 4th, so I haven't read all of them. However, I found that when she started talking about these books, and also the Bronte books in particular, which I read first, I was very, very curious about it. I'm very romantic. Oops. Sorry about that. I'm very romantic, so that was very striking for me, the idea of having old-fashioned kind of dresses and romantic stories. But I remember that my level of English wasn't that good, so I couldn't actually jump into reading this. However, she found that maybe watching some adaptations, some films, could be as useful as reading it for the moment. So that's how I actually end up loving the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice, which I also love because my favorite actress is actually the main character. But I remember that this tutor, she showed me how to watch the movies or the TV series in English, so I could actually improve my English. And that's how I jump into reading and watching stories in any kind of format. The last 2 books I am going to mention are quite different. They are not based on my roots or my upbringing or my teenage years, but more recent and more connected to books that you may think. The first one is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. I have the Spanish version of it and I know it's there, but it's very chunky. I'm not able to pick it at the moment. I will show the English cover, one of the English covers. And I must confess that this book is important because it's one of the few books that I bought initially when I ventured myself here on BookTube, and I did it following the advice of Sam from Thoughts on Toms, who you all know that I really like her kind of her way of thinking about books, and we are very similar in fact. She recommended it, and all I am going to say that it's a fantasy story, very, very based on the, I think it's Polish folklore, I'm not quite sure, but it has also Beauty and the Beast elements, and I really like it. It's more political and more mature than the majority of the kind of YA fantasy novels that I read, but I really like it. And I don't know, I felt like it was destined to be my read. Actually, it was one of my favorite books, favorite recent books. So yeah, I love it. And also I read I have the Wicked and the Divine, and that comic is very, very interesting because it was one of my first attempts to read comics, and it was also like encouraged by BookTube. I remember that I was a little bit confused at the beginning because I haven't read any comics recently when I bought it, and also I haven't read them in English, and the plot is a little bit confusing at the beginning, but I love the aesthetic, I love the story, and I love being able to do the research to discover what was the mystery behind this kind of singers, these kind of huge and famously known singers that were actually something completely different. But I love that I have references to BookTube in my bookshelf at the beginning when I was like trying out if this platform was for me, and I discovered that it was actually for me. So yeah, I'm very happy. So which books were important or significant in your life and why? Would you recommend them to me? Let me a list down below and let me your thoughts on the books that I mentioned as well. Tell me all your kind of significant books in your life and why should I read it or why you love them so much. See you next week. Bye.